Art.
Hi there, welcome to our YouTube channel. We're Team Codo Dragons, and today we're interviewing a two-time Inspire Award winner, Team Astrobruins.
Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Jeremy. I'm co-captain of Astrobruins. My primary sub-teams are Outreach and Software.
Hello, my name is Bien. I am the Outreach lead for Astrobruins, and I'm also on Software, Journal, and Finance.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm also one of the co-captains of Astrobruins, and I am on the Build and Outreach sub-teams.
Okay, so here's our first question. Based on the current shortages of resources and limitations in FTC this year, what advice do you guys have for rookie teams to be successful?
Yeah, so as if you guys attended kickoff, they're basically talking about the control hub shortages. And so really these control hubs are going to be set out to ship in, I think, September to November. It's most likely looking like it's going to be October. And I think one of the biggest things that you guys can do is to basically try to get most of your outreach stuff done. Like, for example, starting to reach out to communities, because if you want to go for a long-term outreach project, now is the perfect time to do so. And then B, I would also suggest using their simulation software that's on, I think, is it on Unity?
Yeah, it's built on Unity. You can probably find it. You can probably find it in the subreddit if you just search for it. There's multiple softwares out there. I think there's also resources provided by First about how to get started with both hardware and software.
Yeah, and then the control hubs will actually be prioritized towards the rookie teams, so there will not be an issue like supply-wise. It's just the time-wise.
Okay. Our next question. When you guys were a rookie team, what resources did you guys find most useful?
I think one of the most helpful resources in terms of hardware is just looking on YouTube to see what all the top teams are doing with their robot, because you can really learn a lot about different mechanisms. For example, we learned how to do linear slides, how to CNC our own chassis, and different intake mechanisms based off of that. So I think just looking at what's already been done, because there's so many people doing outreach and First that there's so many educational resources out there, and I think it's definitely good to take advantage of that.
From a software perspective, there's a lot of documentation on GitHub, and you can find these tools through the FTC subreddit or the Discord. So last year we spent a lot of time reading through those along with code from other teams to understand how the structure was created.
And then from an outreach perspective, I think you should look more towards, rather than looking towards other teams' outreach, I think you should focus on how you can set yourself apart from the other teams, because last year judges really focused on the quantitative values, like how much money was raised, or what percentage of kids gain more knowledge and more interest about First and stuff like that. So it's really about basically taking a look at the other teams, but separating yourselves from them and becoming better than the others in that sense.
So, at what stage of building, coding, and outreach process do you recommend thinking about going to a qualifying tournament?
Ideally, if you're going to be going to a qualifying tournament, you should be at least on your second robot, because it's really important to prototype the different mechanisms that you want. Because last year we were kind of a new team, so we didn't really know that. And going into our first competition, our robot was not consistent, and it didn't work as we planned. So I think the important thing is to get a robot built and then reiterate upon that robot before you go into a QT.
Yeah, I think what Ryan said, one of the most important parts is testing your robot. So leaving a lot of time before the competition, if you're signed up for one, to just test and fine tune, because once you start driving the robot as if it was a game, you're going to realize there's a lot more problems that exist. Another thing I would suggest is for software to allocate at least 2 weeks in addition to whatever padding you have for the competition for software to get things done. Software can do a certain amount of things asynchronously, but not everything, so that's important.
So this is Astrobruins' hardware sub-team. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Ryan.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Noah.
Alright, So our first question is, how should a team go about robot design? Is there a way or potential resources in any form to figure out which chassis and attachments would work best, and if so, how?
Last year we found that we conceptually thought about a robot, and conceptually it worked very well. However, when we started to build the robot, we found out that there was a lot of mishaps with it. So this year we're going about a different way of robot design, which involves a lot of brainstorming, a lot of building and actually testing the robot throughout the entire season. So when we want to finalize our idea, we're gonna CAD it to see how all the parts work together, and then build and test continuously.
Also, last year we tried to start off by CADing our robot, but because a lot of us didn't have experience with the parts, we didn't really know their functions and their limitations. And so by hands-on building with the parts, we got a lot more experience so that we know what they can do.
So lastly, is simple better when building your robot?
I wouldn't say necessarily simple, but consistent is very key in FTC, as you'll be playing multiple matches. Something we found last year is that our robot theoretically could score very high. However, it wasn't as consistent as we wanted it to be, and we saw that many other teams had very consistent robots, and that led them to succeed.
I actually had a talk to Miss Toyama sort of about this, where she said that when people first hear the challenge, they want to do as much as they can with their robot. They want to fulfill every objective. And this leads to a lot of failure because they can't just quite do everything. And so she suggests picking an objective that you want to go for and focusing on that first, using a consistent design so that when it comes time for the actual robot match, you know that your robot can perform consistently and get a certain amount of points. And this is also important when considering alliance picking for finals and semifinals, because people are going to want a consistent robot. They don't want to take the risk that your robot is going to break down, even though it has scored really well in, say, 1 of 5 matches.
Yeah, I think your robot should work simply conceptually. What it should be doing is simple. It should be grabbing this, lifting this. But what you see in a lot of top teams is that they have a really simple strategy, but they execute it very effectively, and there's a lot of complex parts that go into that strategy.
All right, that's it from us. Thank you.
Okay, hi, I'm Jeremy. I talked with you guys a little bit earlier.
Hi, my name is Ben. I also talked with you guys a little bit earlier.
Hello, my name is Aiden, and I'm on the software and outreach subteams.
Okay, so our first question for you guys is, how do you recommend learning Java to program the robot if you're starting for the first time?
All right, so learning Java, like pretty much any coding language, just the more you do it, the more familiar you get, right? If you have absolutely no experience at all, then it's probably best to find some introductory course online. For example, do you guys know CS50? Courses like that, where they just give you an introduction both to computer science in general and also to a specific language. That's probably where you want to start when you're learning software. But FTC has a lot of specific applications of Java that you don't really see anywhere else. So you can use FTC YouTube videos on software and stuff to get you started on that front. For example, coding a mechanism drivetrain. It's pretty specific and complex if you're not sure what you're doing. But you can there's a ton of teams that made resources online that you can just access so you can learn it yourselves.
Something to add on to that is, if this is your first time coding or coding for FTC, it might be a good idea to start with the block coding thing that Rev provides. So if you're learning the concepts, you don't get bogged down with whatever syntactical things that come with Java, and you can just start learning the concepts themselves.
Okay, and lastly, do decent amounts of prior programming experience in any language make a huge impact on the general software design, or does one need only little amounts of programming experience for the code to be successful?
What's most important is how you think about the problems, because once again, the syntax is just learning through resources. That's the best way to do it. And that's even though Java is object oriented and FTC is also very object oriented, that's why they use Java. the actual coding language itself doesn't make too much of an impact on the way you think about the problems. Like if you can go into the mindset of, software design, just like how do we solve these problems? How do we break them up? What would be the best, the optimal solution for this? It doesn't really matter if you have Java experience, which is why having previous coding experience is definitely helpful for FTC because of that mindset that you can get into when you're coding. But it's not necessary either, right? For example, Bien, he had quite little experience with computer science beforehand, and he's joining software team now. He's learning as we go, and experienced members are there to help out those newer members, right? And it works out in a really nice way.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
So our first question. Of all the outreach programs your team has done, which ones have succeeded and which ones haven't, and why?
Got that. Okay, so I think one of our biggest successes so far has been Hack Plus. And basically Hack Plus is our system of basically streamlining the process of becoming a nonprofit organization. So it's also open to any team, so any rookie teams can join like you guys. And basically what happens is you'll be taken under the Hack Plus umbrella and you'll be given immediate nonprofit status. So everything will become easier. Like you don't have to apply those 501c forms to the IRS, stuff like that. You don't need the W-9 forms anymore. We make that easier for you, and I think as of right now we have 13 teams under it, and that actually helps a lot of teams actually be able to get their funds in a very, very easy way without having to fundraise multiple times, and you can just get sponsorships directly from the actual companies.
Yeah. It's important to note that if you want to get certain sponsorships, that you need to have nonprofit status. So by going under the Hack Plus umbrella, you automatically get that so that you can immediately get your sponsorships.
And then talking about some of the outreach that has failed, I think one recent idea that's come to mind is more of the podcast. We were supposed to start an Astro podcast, but that ended up not working because A, it was too long, and then B, we didn't really have a specific goal in mind. It was just to talk about FTC. And to be honest, we're trying to revive it as of right now, and I think even though you call it a failed opportunity, it's not really a failed opportunity because there's something that just went wrong. And we feel like if we revise it more, adding guest speakers, esteemed judges or people who are in the industry, we can actually take these ideas and then breathe some more life into it rather than just calling it failed.
Alright. And lastly, how have you been going about outreach? Are bigger events in less quantity or more small-scale events better to do? How long does it take to plan a big event, and how successful do they usually end up?
So last season, most of our outreach was focused around a large quantity of small-scale volunteering events, and that was decently successful. We won Inspire and moved on to regionals. But this year, we were pivoting to a more long-lasting approach to outreach. So what we decided to do was to have each member pursue a personal outreach project that they're passionate about. And ideally, this project would have a greater impact and it would last for longer, so it makes our portfolio more cohesive in that sort of sense. Yeah.
And in terms of planning these long-term outreach events, these can take up to a couple of months. So right now we actually have a Google spreadsheet used to help us organize. And some of the projects slated will take around 5 to 6 months to even implement in the first place. So it's really about the extent into which you're trying to go for and whether or not you're going to get that done before the competition. And to be honest, I think you should be shooting for the regionals competition rather than just qualifying tournament. So the qualifying tournament, you can use short-term outreach to get to regionals. But when you get to regionals, focus on that long-term outreach perspective.
So lastly, is there anything that you would have appreciated to know when you were a rookie team that you believe all rookie teams should know? Any words of advice?
I think that the most important thing for rookie teams is to plan, because a lot of times you underestimate how long things are going to take. I remember our first qualifying tournament, we were basically on crunch time all the way up until the end, and we didn't really learn our lesson for regionals. So yeah, it's an important thing to keep in mind. You should have a Google Sheet or a calendar or something and block out some time at the end, because things are always going to take longer than they seem.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you found this video helpful.